Good afternoon, students. Welcome back to online biology bridge course classes. In our earlier classes, we have well understood about how different types of the endocrine glands that can be either hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid gland or adrenal gland, how they are helping in various functions that are performed by the body by help of secreting some chemical compounds which we named it as hormones. In association to these endocrine glands, there are another some glands which are very important for the maintenance of sugar, or simply to say glucose level within the body. So that endocrine gland is pancreas. Pancreas is a composite gland, which we refers to say that it is containing two parts. The first part is exocrine part that secretes pancreatic juice for digestion of the food molecules, whereas the another component is an endocrine part. The endocrine part of the pancreas is known as islets of Langerhans. Islets of Langerhans. This is the endocrine part. Endocrine part of pancreas. So looking into the cells that are present in this, the islets of Langerhans consist of two major type of cells, the alpha cell, and the another one is beta cell. These are the two types of cells that are present in the endocrine part of the pancreas. Looking into the hormones that are secreted by these cells, we can understand that alpha cell secretes an hormone which is termed as glucagon. Whereas beta cell secretes an hormone called insulin. So insulin and glucagon are the two hormones, major hormones secreted by an endocrine gland called as pancreas. Coming to the function of the hormone glucagon. Glucagon is the hormone that acts on hepatocytes. That means hepato refers to liver, whereas cyte refers to cell. Cells that are present within the liver are called as hepatocytes. The glucagon hormone secreted by the pancreas acts on the cells of the liver, which results in breakdown of glycogen into glucose. Breakdown of glycogen into glucose is the function performed by the hormone glucagon. If we look into the function performed by the insulin, it also acts on hepatocytes, and this facilitates formation of or synthesis of glycogen from glucose. Here we can observe that glycogen is stored in the liver, whereas glucose is present in the bloodstream. So the concentration or amount of the glucose within the body, between the liver as well as in the bloodstream, is well maintained by two hormones. One is glucagon and the another one is insulin. To sum up, we can say that glycogen glycogen that is stored in the liver that is stored in the liver glycogen that is stored in the liver is broken down into simple units, that is glucose, in bloodstream by the help of hormone called glucagon. So, if glucagon hormone is secreted by the alpha cell, then glycogen, which is stored within the liver, will be broken down into simple forms, that is glucose, which enters into the bloodstream. So, due to the presence of glucagon, we can observe that level of glucose within the bloodstream can be increased. But if there is more concentration of the glucose in the bloodstream, that would lead to a disorder condition of diabetes. Diabetes. To prevent more concentration of glucose within the bloodstream and resulting in a disorder of diabetes, there is the production of another hormone which can decrease the concentration or amount of the glucose within the bloodstream, and that hormone is insulin. So whenever the concentration of glucose is high, more than the normal in the bloodstream, then this glucose can be back stored into the liver in the form of glycogen in presence of the hormone insulin. So this is what the action we can see how well two hormones, one is glucagon, increasing the blood glucose concentration, and another one is insulin, decreasing the blood glucose concentration and maintaining a balance of glucose within the body. So this is what about the pancreas. Specific to each gender in an individual, there are other specific endocrine glands. First one is testis. Testis is acting as a major primary sex organ in case of male individuals. But in association to this function, along with the production of male gamete spermatozoa, also involved in secretion of some major hormones, such as the hormone secreted by testis is testosterone. Hormone secreted by the testis is testosterone. Testosterone hormone is responsible for appearance of various secondary sexual characters in case of male. For example, it can be appearance of low pitch voice, or it can be appearance of the facial hairs, facial, axillary, and pubic hairs, or there can also be appearance of muscular growth, or it can also be appearance of more aggressiveness, that is aggressiveness. So all these are some of the secondary sexual characters that are observed in case of male individuals due to the secretion of the hormone called as testosterone by the endocrine organ called as testis in case of male individuals. Coming to in case of female individuals, there is ovary. Ovary is again the primary sex organ in case of female, but in association to this, along with the production of the ovum as a female gamete, it is also involved in secretion of some hormones. One is, first hormone is estrogen. First hormone is estrogen. Estrogen is the hormone responsible for appearance of secondary sexual characters in case of female. Secondary sexual characters in case of female. So these secondary sexual characters can be appearance of high pitch voice, growth and development of uterus, enlargement of pelvic region, etc. So these all are the different types or the different characteristic features which are considered to be secondary sexual characters that are observed in case of female due to secretion of the estrogen hormone by the ovary. If there is a condition of pregnancy in female, then there is secretion of the another hormone called as progesterone. Progesterone is generally termed as pregnancy hormone because it is responsible for maintenance of the endometrium. First function is for maintenance of endometrium. Endometrium is the innermost layer of the uterus, generally to say womb, a place where the embryo can grow is termed as uterus. So the innermost layer of the uterus is endometrium. The thickening of the endometrium during the time of pregnancy for attachment of the embryo to develop well can be done by the help of the hormone progesterone. Progesterone is also necessary for growth and development of mammary glands. Mammary glands in case of females is a characteristic feature for class Mammalia, wherein these glands are responsible for secretion of the milk to nourish the young ones. So here we look into when there are different types of the endocrine glands and their secretions, chemical components called as hormones, which are performing various types of the activities within the human body. In to nutshell the points, we can understand that the nervous system along with the endocrine system within the human body is helping in sending the nerve impulses or the signal to receive the stimulus, send the signal from environment, and in turn responding to the environment by various types of actions, and various types of actions or the responses will be also given within the body due to the presence of large number of hormones that we have seen. So this is how we have understood how well about different types of the life processes for maintenance and also the major endocrine as well as the nervous system for responding to the environmental condition or else to within ourselves. Looking into the next chapter, that is heredity. Next chapter, that is heredity. Let us look into some terminologies. Before beginning to the actual chapter, let's go through some terminologies or the words which are to be familiar to understand the topic of heredity. So, when we hear across the word heredity in day to day life, we say that some characteristics have been appeared as similar to our parents. So, the process of transferring the traits or a particular character from parental generation to the next generation or to their respective offsprings, we term it as heredity, or we can also call it as inheritance. So heredity or inheritance, which means the process of transfer of characters. Characters are also termed as traits from parental from parental to offspring or next generation individuals. So this is what termed as heredity. Appearance of the skin color or nature of the hair from parent to the offspring is one type of the heredity what we can observe. During the inheritance of the particular character, if we observe, based on the modes of the reproduction, organisms undergo two major types of reproductive processes. Either it can be a sexual method of reproduction or it can be sexual method of reproduction. In case of in case of asexual reproduction, in case of asexual reproduction, we can observe that there is only involvement of one parent. There is only involvement of one parent. Whereas in case of sexual reproduction, if we observe sexual reproduction, if we observe, we can see that there is involvement of two parents. Only a single individual acts as a parent in case of asexual reproduction and gives rise to new offspring or the progeny. Whereas in case of sexual reproduction, we can observe that there are two individuals who are acting as the parents and giving rise to new offspring. So since there is only one individual involved in asexual reproduction, there is no much variation produced. No much variation is produced. But in case of sexual reproduction, since the factors called genes, gene from the mother, gene from the father, are going to be combined within the zygote or the content which is going to form the offspring, both the combinations can arise within a progeny or the offspring. So in case of sexual reproduction, we can observe that variations are much observed. Much variations can be observed in case of sexual method of reproduction compared to asexual method of reproduction. Here the word variation refers to degree of change. Degree of change. How much degree of change is observed in the offspring when we compare it with the respective characters of its parents. Same in case of sexual reproduction, if we observe the offspring about one particular character, then how much degree of change the offspring is showing with respect to the parental generation. The degree of change observed within the particular offspring with respect to the particular respective parent, it is termed as variation. So we can observe that variation observed is very less in case of a sexual reproduction, whereas more in case of sexual reproduction. Considering an example of bacteria, considering an example of bacteria, considering an example of bacteria which undergoes asexual reproduction, this bacteria, let us contains a particular character over or a unique feature on its surface. If this bacteria now undergoes asexual reproduction, means what? Only single individual is acting as a parent and getting divided to form the offspring. Then this bacteria once undergoes reproduction, it gives rise to two offsprings. This is first formed progeny. This is first formed progenies. Two individuals can be formed from the one parent with some change in the characteristic features. Either one progeny can have this special character and another progeny cannot have this special character. If this each bacteria again undergoes further reproduction, then we can observe that the outline of the progenies in any of the generation that can be is same. In any of the generation it is same. Outline of the progeny in any of the generation, it is just a rod like structure as that of the parent. But if we observe this a presence of the special character on the bacteria, then it was more in case of the parental, when the individual parent got divided into first two offsprings or the progenies, that special character was appeared more in one individual and it was very less appeared in case of the another individual. Whereas each one of these bacteria again when got reproduced individually, they formed the respective their progenies with four offsprings or the progenies for F2 generation, that is second generation. In this second generation we can observe the outline of the organism is same, whereas appearance of the special character is not unique to each and every progeny. So this special character, can act as variation and it can help an organism to well survive within the given nature. So, the variations that are produced in each and every generation are desirable if the variations are desirable or good in nature, then such variations help an organism to survive. To help an organism to survive. So, during the inheritance or the heredity, we can see that the particular genes will maintain the outline of the organism, whereas some special characteristics or the variations that would be produced in each and every progeny for any generation that can be, it can be either desirable or it can be even undesirable. If it is a desirable character or desirable to mean useful character for an organism to survive in the particular environment, then that special character will be helping the organism to survive in the environment. So that is what we can see during the time of inheritance. That means variations are very important to be produced. About to understand the topic of heredity or inheritance, let us look into some major terminologies. That is gene. Gene is a part of DNA, a part of DNA that can form protein and shows character character. So when we try to define the gene is a particular part within the DNA. Genetic material within an organism is DNA, or it can also be RNA. Considering an example of human being, DNA is the genetic material. So a very small portion within the DNA can act as gene, and this gene can produce a protein. When the protein is produced, then that can be shown in the form of particular character. Then it can be shown in the form of particular character. So the gene is also called as unit of inheritance. Unit of inheritance, because it is the basic unit which is transferring the character from parental generation to the generation of offsprings. That is why we consider gene to be the unit of inheritance. And next one is allele. Allele is an alternative form of gene. Allele is an alternative form of gene. If we consider a particular gene, that is A and A, let us consider this is a gene, okay, responsible for appearance of skin color or any other character. For our example, let us consider it is responsible for appearance of skin color. This is gene. Togetherly, a gene. Individually, if we observe, we can see that there are two different parts within it. So what these two different parts are termed as, each one of them, they are alternative forms of a gene. Means what? Capital A and small a are alternative to one another. If capital A is responsible for one type of the skin color, then small a is also responsible for another type of the skin color. So both of these are contrast or opposite to each other in the nature. That is why we say that allele is an alternative to different forms of a single gene which is responsible for one character. Okay, then phenotype. Next one is phenotype. Phenotype refers to external appearance. External appearance of an organism can be considered as phenotype. For example, which can be visualized. That is, either that can be height, such as tall, short, or it can be in the terms of color. For example, white, brownish, gray, black, yellow, blue, etc. Or it can also be in terms of shape, that is straight, curly, inflated, constricted, etc. So all these which we can easily observe externally in an organism and easily tell what it is, then that is considered to be phenotype. The next one is genotype. Next one is genotype. It is the genetic composition the genetic composition of a particular character. Genetic composition of a particular character is called as genotype. If we say the height of a particular plant is tall, then we can write what the genes are involved within that plant to make it a tall. Then if we write what gene is responsible, then we can say it as a genotype. For example, for phenotype, height, if we consider tall of a particular plant, then the genotype for this phenotype refers to external observable character. So when we see a particular plant, if we say that the plant is tall, then what it is? It is, we are telling about phenotype. Now, after seeing a particular tree, saying it about it is tall, then if we look into what are the genes that are responsible for tallness of this plant, then that gene can be considered as genotype. So for tallness, genotype can be capital T, or it can also be capital T with small t. So if we write the genetic composition, what are the genes responsible for appearance of tall or any other phenotype in an organism, then such genetic composition we can name it as genotype. Okay, then dominant allele. So we have seen that there are two types of alleles we can observe for one gene. So if we see what are those two types, then we can name them each. One which is expressing itself by stopping the another allele to express, then such a allele we can call it as dominant. Dominant allele is the one who expresses itself in the progeny or in the offspring. So we can define dominant allele as an allele that expresses itself in dissimilar pair of the gene or the allele. If you observe any one allele is expressing itself and giving rise to particular character, then we call that allele as dominant allele, and the another one is recessive allele. An allele which is being suppressed or stopped for expressing when dominant allele is present. When dominant allele is present. See here, let us try to understand this with an example. If we consider tallness of or the height of the stem as a particular character, then height of the stem can have two alleles. Okay, one is this allele, the capital T, which is considered as dominant because it is dominating itself, and particular plants are tall in nature because this allele is responsible for tallness, whereas this small t is recessive. Means what? When small t is present along with the capital T, that is dominant allele, will not allow the small t to express itself. To say dominant allele, recessive allele, when present together, capital T is going to dominate over the recessive allele, so that only dominant allele will be expressed to form the tallness of the plant, whereas the recessive allele is not allowed to express. So we cannot see the short heighted plants when T and small t are present togetherly. So we can observe two types of alleles. One is dominant allele which expresses itself, whereas the another one is a recessive allele which cannot express itself or gets suppressed or it is inhibited, stopped to express itself when it is present with the dominant allele. Then we have another one terminology called homozygous. Homozygous refers to presence of genetic composition, we call it as homozygous condition. For example, TT, both the capital T together can be homozygous, or it can also be small t, which means small t is small t, both are identical, both are recessive alleles, so we are considering it as homozygous condition. Or there can another genetic composition, that is heterozygous, here heterozygous refers to presence of dissimilar pair of alleles. Presence of dissimilar pair of alleles. In case of homozygous, we can see that two alleles that are present for a particular gene or a character, both are same. Either both can be dominant or both can be recessive. But in case of heterozygous condition, we can observe that for one gene, two alleles, both are different. That is capital T, small t. This condition is heterozygous. Here we can understand the word homo itself refers to same, whereas the word hetero refers to different. So these are some of the basic terminologies that we have understood. Now let us study about how this characteristic features, the inheritance of a particular character, how the genes have been expressing themselves, well studied. A person named Gregor Johann Mendel, Gregor Johann Mendel, a person named Gregor Johann Mendel scientist named Gregor Johann Mendel conducted experiments conducted experiments for 7 years from 1856 to 1863. During these experiments for 7 years, he conducted the experiments on the garden pea plant. On garden pea plant, which is scientifically termed as Pisum sativum. On garden pea plant, scientifically termed as Pisum sativum. Looking into, while conducting the experiment, he considered different types of characteristic features because pea plant was having the ability of self pollination and it was very easy to be cross pollinated also. So he chose the garden pea plant and he observed that there were different types of varieties that he could have observed in the pea plants. So he selected some of the 7 characteristic features such as height of the stem, or it can also be flower position, flower position, color of the flower, pod shape, pod color, or seed shape and seed color. So these are the 7 different contrasting characters Gregor Johann Mendel has undertaken to conduct the experiment for 7 years. In the upcoming classes, let us study about how the experiment was conducted and what was the result of it. Thank you.